Another guy they try to win over and woo in the Republican Party is this next gentleman. He's already announced a date to the ball, if you will. Hal Lambert is the Point Bridge Capital founder and CEO. Early on, MAGA ETF creator, much more. But Hal has set his sights on the Florida governor and not probably the most well-known Florida resident, Donald Trump. Hal, it's always good to have you. What made you go for the governor?
Well, there's a number of reasons. I mean, I think the governor actually just said it. I mean, one, Donald Trump can only serve one term. He'll effectively be a lame duck almost on day one if he were to win. But I don't think he can win the general. That's the number two reason. I don't think he can win the general. There's states that matter, and we all know what those are. It's going to be things like Nevada and Arizona and Virginia, Wisconsin. I don't see Trump winning any of those states, and so we can't win if we don't win those states. And so also I think Governor DeSantis has just done an amazing job as governor. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that candidacy. It's time to move on to the next generation. And Governor DeSantis is a vision forward versus, hashing out things from the past. I think it would be a moratorium on Biden's presidency, or a referendum, I should say, versus a referendum on Trump. We don't want another CNN debate for the next 9 months. We want what Governor DeSantis offers, which is a vision forward, not looking back.
Did you announce these intentions, because it's been a while, to Donald Trump? And if so, what was his reaction?
No, I didn't. I basically went public with it yesterday. And, that's the way I decided to go. I think I'm going to do everything I can to help Governor DeSantis win. I'm going to try to help raise as much money as we can raise to help him win the election. And I suspect that Donald Trump has peaked in the polls. So, he loves to talk about the polls. At 52%, I don't think that's that great in the Republican primary. I mean, he's the former president, and yet basically half of the party would prefer someone else. And I think those numbers go lower from here going forward. I think DeSantis closes that gap pretty quickly.
So he hasn't talked to you about this decision since you made it formal yesterday?
No, but he did put out a comment about me, and did kind of the middle school name calling thing, which fine. But again, no comment, no calls from any of the people with the Trump party, with the Trump campaign.
What do you think when the president refers to Ron DeSantis, among a number of names, but Ron the Sanctimonious and things like that?
Well, look, it's not going over well. I mean, when you see him do it publicly at some of his events, the audience doesn't cheer for it. In fact, sometimes they boo. So I don't think people want to see that. People don't want to see that. We want to unite the country, and we can't have name calling. We've got to move to an adult conversation on real issues, and I think DeSantis brings that to the table. If you look at a DeSantis versus Biden, I mean, it's a very stark contrast. It's the next generation moving forward. And I think that's what the American people are ultimately going to decide that they want to have. I just don't think we want to see a Biden-Trump re-election battle. And I think Donald Trump should drop out of the race, quite frankly. For the better of the country, I think he should drop out of the race.
Well, we were just showing a poll that's showing him getting 56% of Republican support. I think it's safe to say he won't drop out. But I am wondering about this idea that he's unelectable, that is, Donald Trump can't get elected again. Weren't they saying that in 2016? And somehow he did. In other words, this support that he has among a strong base of Republicans, you're quite right, it could change as we go through caucuses and primaries, what have you, and that begins to dissipate. But that he could be, and is the odds-on favorite to be the Republican nominee. What do you think slips this time versus last time?
Well, I think last time, and I agree with you, everyone said in 2016 he couldn't get elected, but he was running against Hillary Clinton, which people hated. People hated Hillary Clinton, and even her own party didn't really like her. It's kind of a similar situation. So Trump wasn't hated in 2016 by the left the way he is today. So when you look at it today, there's a large faction of the country that will turn out to vote against him, just as people turned out to vote against Hillary. And I don't think that venom is there for other candidates. So I think that's the big difference is the 4 years that he served, and then afterward and what's going on, he's created a situation where many people simply hate him, and he's not going to be able to win them over.
You know, Al, many have made, that Ron DeSantis is going to have a target on him because he is the most well-known Trump alternative, and one with a very good shot at getting the nomination. Again, these polls notwithstanding, you know them far better than I. But they say to a man or woman, because they're all saying it, oh, the Florida governor's overrated. He inherited a great economy and a great state. He didn't do anything special. He's not all that. And on the stump, he's rather aloof and stiff. You've heard all of that, Hal. I wonder how you feel about that.
Yeah, I think those are not accurate attacks, and I think the American people are going to see soon. I agree. I think he's going to be announcing very soon that's not the case. But look, he won Florida by 19 points, almost 20 points, in a state that historically has been 50-50. And he's done it because he's been a good governor, and he's got a lot of legislation passed, whether it's on schools and having school freedom, school choice, whether it's on immigration, whether it's on mundane things like insurance reform. I mean, he's done a lot of great things in Florida, so he has a record. He's been able to get things done, and he'll run on that. And he's not going to run away from anything that he's done legislatively. And I think once the American people really see that, which I don't think they really know yet. I mean, he hasn't even announced. But once he does, you'll get to see it more.
You know, people who don't know you don't know how successful a businessman you are, how successful a financier and investor you are. So it's that part of you that I want to address in this question about his battle, that is the governor's battle with Disney. Is it really wise? Is it really worth the fallout from that battle, this woke campaign? Even other conservatives say, we agree with the governor on a lot of these measures. It shouldn't be the role of government to punish companies because they don't agree with them. What do you say?
Well, I think we need to separate a state issue versus a federal issue. I don't think he would ever do this at a federal level, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it. But states have a right to work with the companies that are in their state. You see governors get involved all the time to try to woo states to their or companies to their states. You see tax rebates and tax breaks for companies that move there. You know, Disney had a special tax break. And then they started attacking the governor and the legislature about issues that had nothing to do with Disney. And Governor DeSantis decided, hey, you know, you already have this tax break that we gave you as a state. We're going to look at taking that away because you're not the type of company that's supportive of the values that we have in Florida. So I don't
look what Disney
really have a
has
problem
done,
with it.
right? Hal, look what Disney has done. This planned hiring of 2,000 people in a Disney Institute, that's scrapped now. Now, it's clearly payback here, or so it looks. Is he going to rue this move? In other words, is he going to regret that?
No, I don't think so. I mean, look, how many people are moving to Florida every day? I mean, you're talking literally hundreds of thousands of people a year are moving to Florida. So the fact that they're not going to have 2,000 additional employees of Disney in the state, I don't think it's going to move the needle. It's a headline. And I don't think that he's going to back away from this stance on Disney. Again, it was a state issue. I don't see it being replicated at the federal level. And he took a stance that, hey, you don't need this special tax break that literally no other company in the state had. And that's what he went after. He wasn't trying to shut them down. It's just, hey, you're not going to get special privileges that no other company gets.
All right. Just to circle back to something you said at the outset of the interview, Hal, where you think that Donald Trump should step out of the race. Were you saying based on some of the legal challenges he faces and other suits that could be coming? What did you base that on?
Look, I like Donald Trump's policies. I like what he did. I'm basing it on bringing the country back together. I think, look, he is so divisive right now. If he were the nominee, I mean, this would be another situation where we're going to have our own country battling internally against each other in a way that's not healthy. And that's really what I mean. I don't think it's healthy for the country to have to go through this in 2024 unnecessarily. And I think it's unnecessary. We have a candidate in Ron DeSantis that can win, that has a record, that's conservative, that's the next generation. Why go through this unnecessary kind of hatred of each other in the country?
Got it. Hal Lambert, great catching up with you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.